Hello everyone, this is Strawberry Shorty, here with my rant video, The Flaws of the Resident Evil 2 Remake. So before I say anything else, let me clarify that I actually really like this game. The original is one of my favorite Resident Evil titles, and overall the remake is pretty impressive. That being said, it's not without its flaws, and I don't hear enough people talking about some of them. A lot of these flaws are story-related, and reappear in the most recent title, Resident Evil Village. Eventually, Village will probably get its own video. I won't be talking about it in this one to avoid spoilers. There will be spoilers for the RE2 remake throughout this video though, so keep that in mind. Since most of this video will be about story, let's get the gameplay stuff out of the way first. I know people are probably tired of hearing it, but I hate that the zombies in this game are bullet sponges. Like, you can talk about how much it makes sense in universe, but that does not make me hate it any less. The sewer level for me is the worst part of the game, especially when you factor in that chess puzzle. I love the police station and dealing with Mr. X, but the minute I leave that area for good, my desire to keep playing plummets. The sewers are uninteresting, and your way forward will often be blocked by those annoying G-adults. They're tough to beat, and if they manage to attack you, you'll end up poisoned, and there are not a lot of blue herbs in this game. Another thing that bothers me are the unlockables. Beating the game on a certain difficulty within a certain time limit unlocks a weapon with unlimited ammo. It's not bad, but it quickly starts to feel pointless. The easiest to unlock is a basic handgun, which you can then use on a run to try and unlock the unlimited submachine gun. But what's the point of unlocking that one? If you want to try the next challenge, you're no longer allowed to use the unlimited weapons. And by this point, you've probably done story playthroughs already. It would be cool if accomplishing certain things unlocked costumes like the games used to do, but no. In this game, all the costumes are either automatically obtained or paid DLC. Then there's the linearity once you leave the police station. I know you can go back from the sewers, but beyond that, there's not a lot of free roaming. I can excuse that when you're briefly traversing the area outside, because exploring the city was always more Resident Evil 3's thing. Well, it was supposed to be anyway. I'll do a video on that remake later. Places like the Nest severely limit where you can go by blocking off areas, ultimately leaving you with very little to explore. A lot of people talk about the zapping system in the original RE2, which made it clear that both Leon and Claire were exploring these areas by doing stuff like having some puzzles already be solved depending on which scenario you're playing. I'll be honest and admit that I don't really remember it, but one of my bigger problems with the game is how similar everything is. In the original, the story changed depending on what order you played. Doing Leon A and then Leon B would end entirely different than if you did Leon A and then Claire B. This really added to the replayability. In the remake, that's not the case. The A scenarios are largely identical to each other, and the B scenarios are also basically just the A scenarios with some very minor changes and an extra boss at the end. This is by far one of the biggest disappointments of the game. The story in general also has a lot of issues, which go far beyond the different outcomes the original game had. You have Leon and Claire barely interacting at all, and then you have what is proving to be a reoccurring problem in modern Resident Evil titles. And that's the feeling that the people making them, want certain things to happen, but don't bother coming up with a logical way to make those things happen. Many modern horror games are also doing away with the ability to examine your surroundings, which gives them more flavor and allows your character some much-needed development. Games like Silent Hill 3 would be way less enjoyable without all the extra information you could glean from these little things, which tells us more about the main character's personality and past. Files are yet another thing that are largely being done away with, now mostly existing to give puzzle and enemy hints. They used to tell us stories of the people that lived in these ill-fated locations, with some games even using them to give us whole side stories. Here, pretty much the only character who gets any kind of story is that thief guy in the police station. This is a real waste. The police station acted as a shelter in this version, yet we learn nothing about the people who spent their last moments inside. Moving on to the main story, there's so many moments that just feel weird. Like, Birkin pulls a gun on a security team that's armed with assault rifles and probably wearing bulletproof vests. Smart as he is, he should realize this is a stupid move and will only ensure G falls into their hands and that he dies. And then you have Annette, who suddenly realizes the horror of the G-virus and doesn't want Sherry to grow up in a world where it exists. Meanwhile, the T-virus is a much bigger threat to the world, especially as it seems like Annette doesn't know the virus is making Birkin go after Sherry. Also, these guys were apparently experimenting on, like, literal kids But Annette's only just now having a crisis of conscience? Only just now realizing their work could easily hurt or kill Sherry? And then, despite, saying that she's doing all of this for Sherry, she writes her off as doomed when she's unconscious in the trash room, without ever even bothering to go and see what's actually wrong with her. She tells Claire that she has to stop G, and this could be a moment where, cruel or not, she prioritizes the rest of the world over her daughter. Except that she doesn't actually do anything. After Sherry passes out, she just stays there watching her. The cable car is right there. She could easily go and, see her and either try to help or make sure she's okay, or she could just leave. She then tells Claire to bring her to the nest, but she's not there waiting for us. She also keeps coming back to life, which is, really weird. And then you got Ada. She drops her FBI act at the worst possible time, and with really no reason. Annette, who is a confirmed bad guy, told Leon, "You're a mercenary?" Just say she's lying. He can't prove it, and he's too nice to just leave you to die. Tell Leon that he can hold on to the virus until after you all escape, and then, and be like, "Oh, we can meet with other FBI people and they'll confirm me." But then just knock him out once you escape and steal it. Ada clearly doesn't want to hurt him, and with her injury, escaping in the 10-minute time limit would be difficult, so it just makes more sense to keep the act up. And then you got Mr. X. I love him, but I think they shouldn't have shown him prior to the game's release. Their initial claims of getting rid of the B scenarios made people think he was going to be cut. And then the B scenarios got restored, so no one needed to know that he showed up in the A scenario. But his look and the helicopter part were shown beforehand, taking away what could have been a really great surprise for longtime fans. There's also his goal, which seems to be eliminating the police. This seems strange, considering only Leon is an actual cop, and the biggest liabilities for Umbrella would be the STARS members, and only 2 of them are even still in the city. And Nemesis was dispatched to take care of them. Plus, by the time Mr. X gets sent down, there's not really any cops alive. Only, Marvin, Leon, and I guess Eddie, and Marvin's been bit. In the original, Mr. X is actually just after the G virus, which is why he keeps going after Sherry. That brings me to my biggest gripe about this game, and it largely revolves around that pendant of hers. I mentioned earlier how it feels like the people making this game wanted certain things to happen, but didn't bother making those things make sense. This is one of those moments. They wanted to get Sherry away from Claire, make her pendant relevant like it was in the original, and have her end up at the orphanage for her little gameplay segment. The orphanage itself is my first problem. It's not that I can't buy Umbrella owning and using an orphanage for test subjects, but I think it could have been done better. This building is comically small, lacking even a kitchen or a bedroom for the staff, and only having room for 4 older kids and a bunch of babies or toddlers. Babies and toddlers would be stupid choices for experiments, because they can't tell you if they're experiencing any symptoms. Then the orphanage's residents are massacred when one of the kids somehow manages to make it back after being experimented on, escaping whatever restraints or cell that he'd been placed in, making it through numerous doors that should have been secure, and not being spotted on any cameras or by any staff. Rather than see if the kids are infected or use them in experiments, Umbrella decides to just slaughter them all. It feels really forced and just doesn't work for me. Then they have Brian Irons, Raccoon City's chief of police, being the one in charge of the orphanage. I know he's got a reputation as a good man, but why would anyone want the police chief having a side gig running an orphanage? These should both be full-time positions, not ones you're splitting yourself between. This feels like it's only done so Irons can kidnap Sherry and have a reason to take her to the orphanage, but that still leaves the need for a reason for him to do so. Apparently it's because he wants her pendant, and this to me is the biggest plot hole in the entire game. In the original, Sherry's pendant was a locket with a G-virus sample hidden behind the picture inside. Her mother tells her to take it with her when she goes to the police station for protection. Here, it's definitely hers, and it can open a container that has the G-virus and its cure. First off, why does this pendant even exist? It could make some sense if it was the only way to open said container, since Birkin was worried about his work being stolen, but we know it isn't, because he has the container open already when he gets ambushed. Even if that had been the case, why give it to Sherry? When they can't get it open, it seems likely they'd search his home and threaten his family, so either they'll find the pendant or she'll be in danger. There's no reason for this necklace to exist, nor for it to be given to Sherry. In the original, it makes sense that a sample of the virus would be hidden somewhere outside the lab, and the pendant is never explicitly stated to belong to Sherry. To bring up another point, why does Irons want this pendant? He was not a member of Umbrella, just someone Birkin was paying off to keep the police out of their hair, and it's clear from what little interactions from them we get that Birkin really didn't like or trust him. I doubt he'd tell him or anyone else about the pendant's existence, let alone what it does and that Sherry has it. And even if we assume that Iron somehow knows these things, it still doesn't really explain what he hopes to accomplish by getting it. He's portrayed as a much more cowardly figure here, so I don't see him trying to steal a sample of the virus himself. And what would he even do with it? Sell it? To who? Then, in order to steal this pendant, he immediately outs himself to as a villain to Claire and Sherry, rather than play up the kind police chief angle to earn their trust. He doesn't make sure Sherry even has the pendant, and despite later making it clear he would have just let her go upon taking it from her, he forcibly drags her across the zombie-infested city before trying to, then this puts them both at risk when he could have simply ordered her to give him the pendant and then just left. Plus, it makes sure that Claire's going to come after her. Maybe there are explanations for all these things, but the game certainly doesn't offer them. It might seem silly that I'm harping so much on this point in particular, but it just continues to drive me crazy. I've really had an issue with a lot of the story elements from the recent RE games, though at least the Orphanage one gave me an idea for a book series I'm working on. Like I said earlier, I do hope to do videos like these for 3's Remake and Village down the line, but until then, thanks so much for watching, and please share your thoughts in the comments. Bye!